Avas Yojana, we would focus on the federal structure of India. To begin with the independence, during the period of 1950s to 60s, physical infrastructure was the main thing where we focused on. Later on, we started to focus on accelerating the growth, and during 90s, our idea was HDI or Human Development Index. Now later on, under 2010, these HDI calculations were refined, and 2014 we had new parameters that had come in, but the three bases on which HDI focused on was longevity, educational attainment, and a decent standard of living. Longevity measured by life expectancy, educational attainment by the expected years of schooling, and the decent living by the GNI per capita. Now later on in 1995 we talked about gender related development index GDI and gender empowerment measure GEM, and finally in 97 we talked about human poverty index HPI. Now India at present ranks as 131 amongst the nations as per the 2020 Human Development Index, which is in the medium category. We have significantly increased in terms of life expectancy by 12 years, mean years of schooling by nearly 3.5 years, and the expected years of schooling by 4.5 years, which is a significantly good jump. However, a lot still needs to be achieved. Then we talk about the Millennium Development Goals versus the Sustainable Development Goals. We have covered these two goals in a separate lecture, so you can refer that for more details. But the idea is Millennium Development Goals were laid down under 8 goals, 18 targets, and 48 performance indicators, which have been highlighted here. Now, if we focus on each of the schemes under each of these goals, so let's say goal 1, which talks about poverty and hunger, we have schemes like Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Food Security, National Health Mission, Integrated Child Development. For primary education, we have Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, midday meals. For gender equality and women empowerment, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya scheme, incentives to girl child for higher education, Sakshar Bharat, Kishori Shakti Yojana. Then we focus on reducing child mortality, where integrated child development, National Health Mission have been some of the major elements. Combating diseases, we have AIDS control, malaria control, vector control schemes. Similarly, for environment, we have afforestation program, drinking water program, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Amrit, which is the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, and Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Now the last goal, which talks about the global partnership, focuses on national e-governance, national knowledge partner, and a digital India program. Coming on to GST. India started with the concept of GST, that is one nation, one tax, across all the states and union territories, and the 7 center taxes and 8 state taxes have been subsumed under one GST. It started with the idea during Vajpayee government in 2000, and later on in 2017 this was launched as a national tax market. Later on, Jammu and Kashmir under the SGST Act was also part of it. So GST is basically a consumption based tax and is only levied on the additional value at each stage. So let's say it is from wheat to manufacturing of a biscuit. So at every point the cost of flour would not come under GST. It would be charged only once. So at the center it is the center GST, at the state it is the state GST, and sometimes there is an integrated tax, which is in the case of interstate supply from one state to another state, and this is being levied by the federal government, distributed between the center and the state. Also, we have the tax system, which is very refined, and this was brought about the 101 amendment under the constitution. So again important. The next is Niti Aayog. So far India witnessed Planning Commission after independence. Now Planning Commission was a body under which 5-year plans were laid down. Planning Commission was mainly a fund disperser, where all the funds were going in for various departments. So let's say agriculture would have this much fund, industries would have this much fund under each planning year. However, recently we moved from Planning Commission to Niti Aayog. Planning Commission had an idea of one size fits all, and this was an approach given for all the states. It was not centric or customized for each state. However, Niti Aayog, which is more of a think tank or a thought partner, knowledge partner, says that governments, civil organizations, private and public entrepreneurships would come together and give in suggestions. So the idea is state first. That means the requirement of the states would be checked, and there would be two concepts that would grow: cooperative and competitive federalism. Now, what is the difference? Cooperative federalism says that there would be a good link between the center and the state. Competitive federalism says that there would be a healthy competition amongst the states. So this would help us grow further. Now, Niti Aayog focuses on various aspects. For example, we have the focus on health outcome index, school quality index, aspirational district programs for backward districts. Then we have a drafting of a national medical commission bill. Similarly, for agriculture, irrigation Sinchai Yojana has come up. For schools, we have the Atal Innovation Mission, through which innovation and entrepreneurship at school, university level. So at the schools, we have the Atal Tinkering Lab, and which acts as a feed for the Atal Incubator Centers. The next is COVID-19 fiscal federalism. Now here we have certain highlights. For example, borrowing is definitely an important part of funding for the states. Now, states during this COVID time have been borrowing from the center. So, union government has permitted the states to borrow with a net borrowing ceiling of 3% of the GSDP in one financial year. Also, this would ease down the stress on the states in terms of the finances, and they can repay it back as and when they are able to. Also, we have introduced a scheme which is One Nation, One Ration Card. So, a migrant worker moving from, let's say, the state of Gujarat to the state of Bihar would avail the ration in Gujarat as well as Bihar. So that is One Nation, One Ration. Ease of doing business, power sector and urban local bodies are the four citizen-centric areas where special focus has been granted. The next is RBI's WMA, the Ways and the Means Advance. Now these are given to the state banking to help them switch over the temporary mismatch in the cash flow of the receipts and the payments that are done. And RBI has fixed this Ways and Means Advances for each of the states, and these are based on the fiscal deficit, the fiscal proportions and the total expenditures. Also, the interest on the WMA, that is the Ways and the Means Advance, is charged at the RBI's repo rate, and how the repo rate works we have discussed in our classes on economics. Now, the next is the State Disaster Response Fund. This has been constituted under section 48(1)(a) of the Disaster Management Act 2005, and it is the major fund which is available for the state government. Central government contributes nearly 75% for the general category and 90% for the hilly and the northeastern states, and the expenditure was limited to 25% of the allocations for the year, later which was enhanced to 50%. Also, assistance has been given to the states in various forms. There has been a special borrowing window which has been given because of the economic slowdown and the shortfall in terms of the GST compensation fund that has been maintained. And finally, the tax devolution to the states has to be maintained. So under the article 280 of the Constitution, Finance Commission recommends that the percentage of the net proceeds of the taxes should be distributed among the states and how it must be distributed. So all these details have to be given. Now the next is One Nation, One Ration. We already explained how it works. So it works through the beneficiaries which are being given which are under the National Food Security Act, and they are being dispersed through the fair price shop in each of the area under a seamless manner and a very smooth method with a simple biometric authentication. The next is challenges with the skill development. Now skill development has been an important sector again. we have been seeing that advocates have been talking about theoretical development of skill development, but this skill development at district level committees are being headed by district collectors, and they take the charge of the comprehensive skill development and planning for each of the villages. So there has to be a state administrative training institute where the leadership and the training modules for the district skill committee members are given. The advantages are given for shorter courses, how to solve a particular issue in a particular language, what could be the resources, how those could be availed through the government, how even the workers who are engaged with low skilled jobs, for example the Safai Karamcharis, their works could be brought into importance through mechanization, and how mechanization can change their nature of job. So skill development at each of the stage becomes very crucial and important. Now we would focus on two important states and how they developed and grew. So the first model we would talk about is Gujarat state, and the second is Maharashtra state. Let's first start with Gujarat. So Gujarat became an independent state in 1960s and is now at present not only a symbol of ease of doing business but also ease of living, and is synonymous to development. There have been various universities in Gujarat, starting from petroleum universities, law universities, forensic universities, the Raksha Shakti University recently established, to Children's University. So there have been numerous institutions from vivid dimensions which have come up in Gujarat. Now if we talk about the political aspect, the first chief minister were Dr. Jivraj Mehta. Narendra Modi was the youngest chief minister of Gujarat and served for 14 years. Anandiben Patel was the first female chief minister, and she started the Ma Annapurna Yojana, which was for the nutrition in Anganwadis. Now in the recent years we have come up with numerous schemes in Gujarat. Some of those are to be discussed. So the first one here is Sat Pagla Kalyana Yojana, which talks about the farmers and the cattle breeds of Gujarat, how they can be self-reliant. And there is another scheme which talks about the Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana, where 0% crop loan assistance to be given to nearly 15 lakh farmers. Similarly, Sagar Khedut Sarvangi Kalyan Yojana talks about how the fishermen and the sailors can benefit. More than 400 mobile veterinary clinics and toll-free number and veterinary services 24/7 has become functional. Under the PESA Act, which is the Panchayat extension to scheduled areas, upliftment for tribal areas, and more than 90 lakh tribal population has benefited through it. 41 Eklavya model residential schools have been established for tribal students, and more than 1.35 lakh students in around 765 ashram schools have been receiving education. A national tribal museum has been established on an area of 70 acres. Also, land has been given to low-income families in the form of Santani, and there has been allotment of land under the Farm Land Ceiling Act. Under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, more than 7.6 lakh families have been given shelter in urban areas. Similarly, under the Seva Setu program, all the essential documents, be it the certificate of income, certificate of caste, have been made available to the citizens at their doorstep, and now digitally even. The Mukhyamantri Apprenticeship Scheme has focused on learning with earning, and therefore Gujarat has the lowest unemployment rate in India at only 3.4%. It is the first state to implement 10% reservation for the non-reserved population as per the central government guidelines. Also, under Digital Gujarat, modern facilities have been provided in more than 16,000 classrooms under the Gyan Kunj program. The Shodh Yojana talks about 15,000 per month of scholarship for 2 years to students who undertake research projects. Kala Mahakumbh is an initiative for bringing art and culture. Similarly, State Yoga Board, Sanskrit Board has been established, and Gujarat is the first state to have a state yoga board. Only 9 universities in Gujarat have, this is only from the universities of Gujarat. So That is another important aspect. Then we have the Mukhyamantri Mahila Utkarsh Yojana, where nearly 1 lakh women groups have been formed, and these are in the rural and the urban area, and they can benefit from an interest-free loan under the central government scheme. Similarly, Vehicle Dirkari Yojana, where families with an annual income of up to 2 lakh can benefit for admissions of their daughters in grade 1 and grade 9 through a monetary benefit. Ganga Swarup Arthik Sahay Yojana talks about assistance to widows that has been increased. Similarly, Ma Amritam Ma Vatsalya Yojana talks about health shield of 5 lakh instead of 3 lakh coverage. A new AIIMS, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, has been established at Rajkot, and it's over an area of more than 200 acres. Similarly, a lifetime imprisonment provision has been made under Gujarat Control of Terrorism and Organized Crime Act in 2019. Cyber Ashwasth program has been started as the first cyber crime prevention in India, has been started in Gujarat. Under Project Vishwas, CCTVs have been established in nearly 41 cities with 7,000 cameras. Gujarat is committed to provide piped water supply to every house under the Nal Se Jal program. Gujarat is second after Tamil Nadu to have a desalinization plant to make seawater potable, that means drinkable. The next is Soni Yojana in the Saurashtra area, which can turn the Saurashtra region green and bring in drinking water for more than 80 lakh people in the region. Gujarat is one of the best destinations which has been awarded as a destination for foreign direct investment, that is foreign companies investing into India, and investments more than 43,000 crores have been received in the last financial year. Production first, permission later is a new concept that the state has laid down for giving the thrust to MSMEs. Similarly, auction of mines and minerals can now be done online with better transparency under the Trinetra drone surveillance scheme. The first Ro-Ro ferry has started from Goga in Bhavnagar to Dahej in South Gujarat and reduced the distance of 360 kilometers to only 31 kilometers. Gujarat has led the country in installation of solar rooftops across India, and Gujarat government is also planning to introduce more CNG, so more than 900 CNG stations would be established. Shravan Tirth Yojana is a scheme through which 60 years and above elderly person can take the Yatra Dham Darshan in Gujarat. Nanda Bed Seema Darshan in Banaskantha in Gujarat is an effort where border tourism has been provided at the similar to the Wagah and the Atari border. The next is the Gir and the Devalia Safari Park. Similarly, we have Ambaradi Safari Park in Amreli, where Asiatic lions population has been seen. Shivrajpur Beach has been given a world-class tourist beach destination, and it's among the 8 beaches in India which has been given the tag of Blue Flag Beach. So again important, a dinosaur fossil park has been established at Rayoli, village of Balasinor, and this is the India's largest and the world's third largest dinosaur fossil site. Similarly, Mahatma Gandhi's life has been connected through the Gandhi tourist circuit, and Dandi Kutir in Gandhinagar, Kirti Mandir in Porbandar, Mahatma Gandhi Museum in Rajkot, and National Salt Satyagraha Memorial in Navsari are part of it. First seaplane service has been started from Sabarmati riverfront to Statue of Unity in Kevadia. Similarly, we have the Mukhyamantri Sathe Mokla Male, that means people from minority communities and deprived section can directly interact with the Chief Minister, and a portal has been established for it. Gujarat accounts for nearly 23% of the total exports of the country and has been ranked as the first state in terms of Export Preparedness Index 2020. Gujarat is also now setting up kind of numerous startups, and a bullet train is being proposed between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. Similarly, in terms of sports, we have Sardar Vallabhbhai Sports Stadium, which can now host Asiad and Olympic Games. The Narendra Modi Cricket Stadium is the world's largest cricket stadium with a capacity of 1.2 lakh spectators. UNESCO has included Rani Ki Vav in Patan and Champaner as the heritage sites, and also Ahmedabad has been included as a heritage city. Ahmedabad, Vadodara, Rajkot, Surat are now part of the world's 25 top developed cities. Similarly, as per the Forest Survey report, 10,000 hectares of the land has been increased in terms of forest area. Gujarat has been receiving numerous FDI. Under the Industrial Entrepreneur Memorandum, Gujarat stands first in terms of the entrepreneur memorandums filed in the recent years, and of the 500 fortune companies, 100 fortune companies are establishing in Gujarat, with more than 3.5 million small and medium scale entrepreneurs which have their presence in Gujarat. Gujarat is also called as the metal capital of India and is a key driver to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Post lockdown, we have seen an increase in the power consumption and gas consumption, and it is an indicative of a strong recovery of economy. Similarly, if we focus on some of the major developments, we have the GIFT City, the International Financial Service Center coming up in Gujarat GIFT City in terms of global fintech reserves. We also are talking about a dream city in Gujarat, which is the Diamond Research and Mercantile City. Similarly, world's largest solar and wind hybrid parks would be established in Kutch. Ahmedabad, Dholera would be the first special economic zone that would be established, and we are also focusing on the developments and lowering of the unemployment rate at a constant basis. Coming on to the next state is Maharashtra. Now, Maharashtra model has been important. If we focus on to the history, the Chalcolithic sites at Imangaon has been discovered. Later on, we had Mauryans followed by the Satavahanas. During that time, we had numerous Buddhist rock cut caves like the Bhaja, Nasik, Pithalkhor, which have been seen. Later on, the Abhira and the Trikutras dominated the regions of Maharashtra, followed by Vakataka, and Vakatakas were later followed by the Chalukyas and Rakshutras. Rakshutras were involved in the formation of Ellora caves, and then we had Yadavas in the regions of east and center Maharashtra and Shilhara in the west and the south Maharashtra. During that time, numerous temples were developed. These were the Nilang, Khirdarpur, Gundeshwar temples, and also we had forts like Devagiri, Panhala, which started to develop. Later on, Alauddin Khilji defeated the Yadavas and established. Then Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad and remained there for few years. Then we had the Bahmani Sultanate or the Bahmani dynasty that came into power. Faruqis ruled over the region, and then we have the Khandesh area, which was ruled by the Faruqis, and Gujarat Sultans ruling the regions of Mumbai. Later, Nizam Shahi and Adil Shahi dynasties came in, and finally Chhatrapati Shivaji, till the time Britishers advented into India and Maratha kingdom got to an end. As of present, on 1st May 1960, Maharashtra became an independent state with Marathi people as a common native language. 35 districts divided into 6 divisions: the Amravati division, Aurangabad, Konkan, Nasik, Nagpur, and Pune division. Now, the Konkan division includes the Mumbai city, Mumbai suburb, Ratnagiri, Sindhudurg, and Thane as the major areas. Okay. Now, talking about the geography, so we have the Western Ghats and the Sahyadri mountain ranges with an elevation of nearly 1000 meters. On one side, we have the Konkan. On the other side, there is the Malwa plateau. Maharashtra is known for its iron ore deposits. So, granite, quartzite are some of the resources. Nanded is the region where pink granites are found. Kameti in Nagpur is known for its coal. Maharashtra varies in terms of water requirement. So some of the areas where you have hilly and hard rock like granite only sources tank irrigation, for example Vidarbha. In the regions of Tapi and Purna, tube wells have been seen to work well, and then in the coastal areas we do have other sources of irrigation. Similarly, the major mineral belts lie in the regions of Chandrapur, Gadchiroli, Bhandir and Nagpur. Most of the most popular religion is Hinduism, which is 80%, followed by a mix from other religion. And then we have examples from all the religion. For example, Lord Ganesh dedicated as the 8 faces of Lord Ganesh in the Ajanta Ellora caves. Then we have Shiv in the Elephanta caves near the regions of Aurangabad. We have Buddhist period developments and Buddhist caves that are seen. Mother Mary Church at Mahim and Hazi Ali at Mumbai. So it is an amalgamation of nearly all religions. Then came during the 13th and the 17th century the Bhakti movement. So Saint Dhyaneshwar, Namdev, Tukaram and Chokla Mela are some of the examples who started the Bhakti movement. Varkari movement started, was again important, and farmers and the local community got close to it. Vithoba was believed to be an avatar of Lord Vishnu, and there was an annual pilgrimage that was hosted. Women have been playing an important role. Now we have seen the first women doctor, late Anandibai Joshi, who hailed from Maharashtra. Ahilyabai Holkar, Rani Lakshmi Bai, another great examples from Maharashtra. We have seen that there has been a constant role of social reformers reforming the practices of child marriage, child education, widow remarriage, sati pratha in India. So M.G. Ranade, Ramabai Ranade, Savitribai Phule, Pandita Ramabai are some of the leaders who started that. In 1930s in Pune, which was called as the Oxford of East during that time, we could see women cycling to universities and colleges, and that showed that there was a very high standard of education that was seen in Maharashtra as compared to other parts of India. The first Indian newspaper, Darpan, started in Maharashtra. The formation of Indian National Congress was in Mumbai under the leadership of A.O. Hume, and the world's largest film industry, Hollywood, again hails from Maharashtra. The next is One Nation, One Election. Now we have been focusing on One Nation, One Election, but if we go back to history, we have seen that every 6 months, starting from 1951, the elections were held simultaneously for Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies till the time of 1967. It was the point where last simultaneous elections were held, and thereafter there was a break because there was a premature dissolution of the Lok Sabha, and the legislative assembly time periods changed, and therefore simultaneous elections for the center and the state could not be managed later on. There were two premature dissolutions of Lok Sabha in 1998 and 1999, and there were coalition governments that were seen there. However, if we focus and come back to the idea of a simultaneous election, what is the benefit? We are reducing the labor, the human resources, the time and the expenditure that is done to conduct the elections, definitely. And also, if there are staggered elections, this would create a more pressure onto the government in terms of advertisement, political campaigns, and less focus on the administrative processes. However, this saving can be held with the Central Police Reserve Force. Now, if there are two different elections, one for the center, let's say in 2005, and in 2006 or 7 we have the state elections, what would happen? The CRPF would have to be deployed again. So the jobs could be done concurrently, saving a lot of manpower, lot of time, lot of expenditure, but there would be an additional expenditure. How? The EVM machines have 3 control systems: the control unit, balloting unit, and a VVPAT printer attached to it. Now, the recommended life of an electronic voting machine is only 15 years. One set is used in one polling station for one election. Now, we have different sets for Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly. So, you would have to bring in 2 sets simultaneously if you are having a simultaneous election. And the tentative price, which is fixed for one set of the control unit and the balloting, is around 17,000. VVPAT cost around again 16,000. So, at the rate one polling station would work, there would be an additional expenditure for procuring EVMs for nearly 1 million plus polling stations, because if you want to have a simultaneous election, you need to have 2 voting machines at the same time, and therefore there would be double the expenditure that would be brought into account. The Model Code of Conduct is the set of guidelines which has to be followed once the date is announced by the Election Commission. So Election Commission announces a date that, let's say, 2 months after the elections would be held, and therefore the Model Code of Conduct comes into play, and this brings in restrictions onto the party which is in power. Now, it prohibits the official resources to be used for electoral activities. For the Lok Sabha elections, if there are any new schemes which are being released by for the state before the polls, those the restrictions on those would be done. In case of by elections, those restrictions would be done just at the district level where it is concerned. Simultaneous elections definitely have their benefits, but do bring around a certain more additional cost for the same. The next is, whenever we focus on federalism, a federal structure with the center and the state, there are 6 pillars. First, all the states should be autonomous. At the national level, integration should be there. Centralization, decentralization, nationalization and regionalization. All these aspects should be taken into account. So, India we say is quasi-federal. That means India is technically a union of all states with subsidiary federal structures rather than a federal structure with a subsidiary unit. So, center has a say over the matters of the state. Now, state government also follows the center orders and both of them try to keep themselves independent, but there can be powers that could be captured under, let's say, a epidemic act or a disaster management act. India also is a member of ILO, the labor organization. Now, International Labour Organization, under that we have ratified various core laws, for example, equal remuneration, worst forms of child labor, abolition of forced labor, minimum age convention and so on and so forth. Now, what we need to do when we ratify? We need to make sure that our center government consults with the state governments and ensures that this law would be followed not only at the center but also at the state before we can ratify at any international convention. So, for ratifying to any international convention, we need to have a proper correlation and a good bandwidth between the center and the states. President can also impose president rules in the state for the state that wishes to enforce the law against the center's direction under Article 365, and this has been evident under the SR Bommai and the Union of India case. The next is radio frequency and its distribution, the spectrum. Now, this is a very important component of today's life where we focus on connectivity and entertainment. Recently, Milgrom and Wilson in 2020 received the Nobel Peace Prize for economics for the idea where they populated the auction theory and they introduced the US spectrum auction in 1994. Both of them have talked about numerous innovative formats under which this auction can be done. So, the first one is the simultaneous multiple round auction, which is known as SMRA. Now, this has been famous in part of Preston McAfee. In 1994, US Federal Communications Commission, and they have been developing this under three aspects: the share auction, combinatorial clock auctions and incentive auctions. Later on, we have focused on how these competitive prices could be brought. So, when auction is being decided, how it works, we need to first identify the radio frequencies at which various devices work. So, we would auction the radio frequency for the various devices. Now, each of the devices have their radio frequency. Now, within the device, let's say I am giving certain radio frequencies for telephone networks or mobile telephony. Now, within that, the spectrum would be divided to, let's say, Airtel, Vodafone, Jio. So, each of those would have the spectrum that would be given and assigned. So, how does the spectrum work? So, as we mentioned, the spectrum works either as single or multiple auctions. There would be 4 classical auctions, which is the English auction, Clock and Dutch, the first prize auction and the Vickrey or the second prize auction. Now, sometimes the modern forms also have the private value models and the ex ante asymmetric models. The Vickrey model, which is the first prize model, Vickrey found that the first prize model was inefficient and therefore had asymmetric bidders, and therefore a second prize option was much more efficient, and due to it the issues of revenue generation could be checked. Now, the multiple object auction focused on 2 auctions, homogeneous and heterogeneous. Homogeneous focused on divisible objects like government debts, electricities, The heterogeneous focused on non-identical objects like radio frequencies, bus routes, and their complements or substitutes. So both of those involved large values, and how this should be taken into account focused well. So Wilson talked under his auction theory about using the Bayes-Nash equilibrium concept, where mineral right models have interdependent values, and this extended model with information asymmetries was brought again further. So there were 3 rounds of auctions which are relevant to radio frequencies. Those are the SMRA, which we already talked about, the simultaneous ascending auctions, and the combinatorial clock auctions that need to be proposed along with it. Now these versions have already been in line in countries like US, Canada, UK, Finland, India, Poland, and they have been adopted by many other countries like Austria, Canada, Denmark, Ireland, and so on. Now this auction represents 2 important aspects: the best productive suppliers would minimize the cost, and how to generate funds through the markets rather than having a taxation system or a taxation policy. So International Telecommunication Union has 4 different systems for valuation of a spectrum. Those are the price which has been from the previously auctioned indices, the estimations which are based on the producer surplus, the production function, and the revenue surplus. Based on that, we have different approaches for valuating the spectrum, and based on that, TRAI in India has been bringing in a multivariate regression method to understand how these spectrums could be allocated and managed, and therefore bidding of a spectrum started in India, and this bidding was under the following frequency megahertz that has been mentioned here. This started as the SMRA technology, and with this we can have much more stronger network capability and new players that can start the services as soon as possible. So those were some of the highlights that we have discussed in this Yojana edition. We would be focusing on Yojana and Kurukshetra on a monthly basis. So stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.